I love you, O Lord, my strength. The Lord is my rock and my fortress and my deliverer. My God, my rock in whom I take refuge, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold. I call upon the Lord, who is worthy to be praised, and I am saved from my enemies. This God, his way is perfect. The word of the Lord proves true. He is a shield for all those who take refuge in him. For who is God but the Lord? And who is a rock except our God?
Welcome back to Mystery Island's Lighthouse. I'm the Lighthouse Keeper, Jen. I'm so glad to be with you here on this last day of tracking the one true God on Mystery Island. Do you remember on Monday we talked about a man named Paul, and he went all over the city of Athens where they had red tiled roofs and pillars. They had a whole belief where they thought there were so many gods. And Paul showed them that there was one true God, and he was great. And then on Tuesday, we talked about a really big fish and a guy who got swallowed into the belly of a really big fish named Jonah. And he went to the city of Nineveh and told them about how great and almighty God was. And we learned some amazing words, didn't we? We learned some really big words that all start with omni. Do you guys remember any of those? Right? We started with omniscient, which this is not omniscient. Omnipresent was one of them. That was the last one. Omnipotent. Right? That was one too. And omniscient. Right? Those three big words would talk about God being all-knowing and all-powerful and all-present. What a great and awesome God he is. And we knew that God was almighty because of the story of Jonah. And then we talked about seeing things that we'd never seen before. And remember the ocean that turned sparkly blue that I got to see? And Isaiah, who saw God on his throne in heaven. Wow. And we know that God rules the whole universe. And he knows you and wants to take care of you. And yesterday, we used our hands as we talked about Jesus, didn't we? We said, yes, I am a child of God. Indeed. We know that God is Emmanuel. He's God with us. Jesus came all the way from heaven to earth to show us what God is like. So God is Emmanuel. He is God with us. Well, today I want to talk about God being trustworthy. Do you know what it is to be trustworthy? It means that I can believe what you say. If you make a promise, you're going to do it. And God makes us promises. He does, indeed. And every promise that God makes, he follows through on, meaning he keeps his promises. God is trustworthy. And there's a story in one of my favorite books that my mama used to read to me when I was a little girl. My brother and sister and I would sit on the couch with my mama, and she would read until she couldn't read anymore because her voice would disappear. And she would read to us from this book. A whole set of these books. There's 10 of these books. And this is book number 4. And this is a picture, an artist's idea of what it could have looked like a long, long time ago of a little boy named David. And he's standing in a stream here, and he's collecting rocks to put in his little sling. Can you see this sling? It's a little pouch made out of leather, and you'd put one stone in it, and you'd swirl that sling around with your hand, and you'd let go of one leather strap, whoosh, and the stone would go flying and would hit what you were aiming at if you were a good stone thrower, right? And David is there, and you'll notice he's very little, but there's a huge soldier, a warrior standing here, and he looks very intimidating. So we're going to read this story from the Bible storybook, and we're going to learn a little bit about why is God trustworthy? Why can I believe what God says? Does the Bible teach me that? This story comes right out of the Bible. You ready? So this is the story about David, and he was pretty fantastic. It was lonesome about the house. 3 of David's older brothers had gone to help Saul fight the Philistines. Father and mother were worrying about what might happen to them on the battlefield. David was worried too, but he had to stay and take care of the sheep. He was thinking about Eliab, Abinadab, and Shammah. Perhaps they would be hurt or taken prisoner, and he'd never see them again, and that made him sad. So he lay where the sheep were feeding around him with the cool wind blowing over him, and he wondered why people would fight and hurt each other. Then he remembered that one day a lion had come to attack his sheep, and he had fought and killed the lion all by himself. Would he ever forget that lion? Or the bear that tried to make off with one of his lambs? He had not wanted to kill them, but there was no other way to protect his sheep. The Philistines, though, were different. They should have known better. Why didn't they stay in their own country? Why did they have to come and bother all the people like they did? Suddenly, David heard a call. David! It was Jesse, his father. He wanted to send some food to his sons in the army camp. Would David please take it? So David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with a keeper and went as Jesse had commanded him. How far he had to travel, we don't know, but he did get to the camp. And he left food with the man who was in charge and then went to see the soldiers looking for his brothers. How glad he was to see them again. Eliab, his oldest brother, did not seem very happy to see him. He said angrily, "Why have you come, and where did you leave the sheep? I know you are prideful and have a naughty heart. You have come down so that you could see the battle." "What have I done now?" sighed David, like any boy who was being scolded by his big brother. Then someone shouted, "Look, there he comes." David looked, and to his amazement, out of the camp of the Philistines came a giant of a man, at least 9 feet tall, wearing a huge brass helmet, a brass coat of mail, and a brass armor on his legs. See him here? Wow, he's humongous. Wow. As for the staff of his spear, which he's holding here in his hand, it was like a weaver's beam, and his spearhead weighed 600 shekels of iron. And one bearing a shield went before him. You see his shield bearer? Someone's carrying his shield to keep the giant safe. "Who's that?" asked David. "Goliath of Gath," said someone. "Why is everybody running away?" wondered David. "Why doesn't somebody stand up to this man, the giant though he is?" Disappointed and angry, he said out loud, "Who is this Philistine that he should defy the armies of the living God?" Somebody heard what he said and told King Saul, who then sent for David. "Let no man's heart fail because of him," David said to the king. "Your servant will go and fight this Philistine." Saul wouldn't hear of it. "You can't go, you're too young." But David told the king about his fight with the lion and the bear. And he said, "The Lord delivered me out of the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear. He will deliver me out of the hand of the Philistine." At last, King Saul was convinced. He saw here a boy with the heart of a lion and strong in the strength of God. He told David he could go and fight Goliath if he wanted to, and he gave him a special suit of armor to protect him. Of course, the armor was too big. Nothing fit. David felt uncomfortable. "I can't go in this," he said, and took all the armor off again. So he took a staff in his hand, and he walked down to the brook of the valley and carefully chose 5 smooth stones, putting them in the shepherd's bag which he carried. What in the world is he doing? Everybody wondered as they watched him calmly picking up one stone after another. Is he just going to throw stones at this guy? They wondered even more when they saw him walk towards the towering figure of the waiting Philistine with no weapon but a sling. As David drew near, Goliath became angry and cursed David. "Am I a dog," he said, "that you would come at me with staves? Come to me, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." David took no notice. Instead, without a trace of fear, he replied, "You come to me with a sword and a spear and a shield, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand." This was too much for Goliath. His face was livid with anger. He lunged forward, his enormous spear grasped tightly in his massive hand. But David did not flinch. Instead, he took one of the stones from his bag, put it in his sling, and threw it with all his strength at the advancing giant. Here we go. Wow. The watching thousands held their breath. Everyone knew there would be no second shot. Suddenly, Goliath stopped. He stumbled and fell down, his huge spear clattering to the ground. The pebble had struck him in the forehead, the very one place on his body that was unprotected. Running toward the fallen Philistine, David drew the giant's sword and cut off his head. The battle was over. Seeing that their champion was dead, the rest of the Philistines fled in terror, the Israelites chasing them back to their own country. Wow. God had told David he would protect him from his enemies, and that as he followed God, he would protect the nation of Israel. And David stood in front of 2 armies, the Israelite army and the Philistine army, and he said, "God can take care of us." And he defeated the giant. He was a little boy, and he defeated the giant. Did God keep his promises? That as we follow him, he'll take care of us? In the case of David and Goliath, you betcha, he sure did. What God says he will do, he does. He always keeps his promises. Can I trust God? Yes. Just like David, a young boy who faced a giant and came out successful. He won. There may be giants in your life that you will face. They might not be a big warrior like this guy. It might be a test you have to take, or someone that you just don't get along with, or hundreds of other things. You might get sick. Someone you love might get sick. All sorts of things could happen. But God says that he is with you, even if there's a giant that is challenging you. Might be a warrior. It might be something else. But I promise that God is right there with you. Now, how do I know that? Because God said that he would be right there with you. God is trustworthy. You can believe what he says. Dear, dear, dear ones, it has been so fun to spend this week with you. I hope that you've learned that you can track the one true God, and the Bible is the best way to do that. And then you get to live everything you're learning about how God is almighty, how God is powerful, how God is a ruler, how God is Emmanuel, and God is trustworthy. You have a good day. Thanks for coming to the Lighthouse.